And we welcome you to Biblical Strategies Today, featuring pastor, teacher, and author Phil Moser. Hi, I'm Scott Foreman. Phil, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be with you.
Well, sexual temptation, as we've been talking about all this week, is something that, if we are honest and humble, we all struggle with. It's interesting, Phil, as we think about temptation, that temptation in and of itself really isn't sin, but simply a doorway to the possibility of sinful thinking or behavior. So as we consider that and the possibilities that exist all around us to sin, how do we set up guardrails in our lives to make sure that we protect ourselves from sexual temptation?
Yeah, it's a great question, Scott. One of the ways that I began to look at that in this study when I was writing the book, Strength for the Struggle, was to simply say, is there a case study of someone who was attempting to live a godly life but fell in this matter? And the life of King David obviously came to mind. What I hadn't considered was that there were certain aspects in David's life that he had early on in his life and ministry that he started to make compromises in, and they slipped away. And so I thought about those. You may remember that when David slayed Goliath, he did so by picking up 5 small stones in the brook of Elah. And I remember thinking, I wonder if there's just 5 qualities that were in David's life that slipped as he began to grow older and when he struggled with Bathsheba. And I came up with 5 directly out of 2 Samuel. Here they are: humility, integrity, loyalty, responsibility, and accountability. This is going to be a little quick, but just let me give you brief understandings of each of those. Because these are 5 guardrails or 5 stones you can pick up to be victorious in the battle with this particular temptation. Humility is to walk in humility, is to recognize that you cannot win the battle with sexual temptation in your own strength. David clearly understood that in the battle with Goliath. He said, God's going to give you into my hand. But when he struggles with sexual temptation, you don't hear him mention the name of God at all. It's almost as if he thinks he can be victorious on his own. The second word is the word integrity. To practice integrity is to make a commitment to transparency during the temptation and to confession after sin. You may remember that when David sinned with Bathsheba and she was expecting a child, it wouldn't be until months later when Nathan would come and confront him that you would see David make a confession. He had no integrity in that moment. He hid that fact. And if you trace David's life earlier, you're going to see that lying became a part of his life earlier than in his sin with Bathsheba. The third word is the word loyalty. To desire loyalty is to love God by using your body for his glory, not your temporary pleasure. Remember, David was willing to lay down his life, as it were, to take on Goliath, believing that God's glory mattered. But when it comes to sexual temptation, he engages not in the loyalty of God, but almost a loyalty to himself, like he desires certain things and he wants those. The fourth word is the word responsibility. To exercise responsibility limits your opportunity for temptation because you're preoccupied fulfilling your commitments. And you may remember that in 2 Samuel chapter 11, Verse 1, that's the chapter that deals with David's sin with Bathsheba. It says, in the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab, and he remained behind in Jerusalem. He wasn't fulfilling his responsibilities. Often when I speak with individuals who struggle with a particular sexual sin, like pornography, for instance, they've acknowledged to me that one of the open doors for that is they're just bored. They come to the weekend, they don't have anything to do, and I just encourage people, listen, work hard, study hard, read hard, play hard. If you don't have anything else to do, get engaged with Habitat for Humanity, do some charitable work, fill up the boredom time, because that was one of David's unfortunate errors. Responsibility. Finally, accountability. To live with accountability is to guard your vulnerabilities through the Word and fellow believers. So memorize Scripture, because that provides accountability, and develop accountability partners. David had Jonathan, he had Samuel. On 2 accounts of sexual sin, both with Bathsheba as well as with an earlier commitment that he had with a married woman by the name of Abigail, you find that he lost Samuel or Jonathan prior to that. So without accountability, David was vulnerable. 5 words, your guardrails as you were. Humility, integrity, loyalty, responsibility, accountability. Those are the words that help us. They're like little rocks in a shepherd's sling, and with them, you can slay that giant.
So Phil just mentioned those 5 guardrails from his book, Strength for the Struggle, which examines sexual temptation from the Scriptures. and offers help for standing against sexual temptation through the example of Christ. Just go to Amazon or biblicalstrategies.com and click Store to order your Strength for the Struggle package today, which includes a book, study guide, and scripture retrieval system. Or you can call us toll-free at 877-772-1992. That's 877-772-1992.